On this episode of Into the Unknown, I'm joined with my real good friend Elise Rankins. Elise and I met back in 2018 when we both were working at the College Football Hall of Fame down in Atlanta. Since then, it's just been great to get to know Elise and see how we've grown, not only when we were at the hall together, but also outside of the hall. She's doing just so many incredible things, and she just was a perfect guest to have on the show. Her organization, the Coaches Collective, is just doing so many amazing things, and let's jump into it. Today, on this episode of Into the Unknown, I am joined with one of my real good friends. Elise, how are you doing today?
I'm well. How are you, Jeremy?
I'm doing absolutely amazing. I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. I really do appreciate it.
Anytime.
So let's jump right into this. I want to hear that chapter one origin story. Who are you and where are you from?
I am from Newport News, Virginia. Um, I grew up there, lived most of my life there, went to college, undergrad in Charlotte, North Carolina, then went to grad school in Pittsburgh, moved back to Virginia after school for like 13 years, I think. Longer than what I expected. And then I moved to Atlanta um, in the winter of 2018. And that's when we met at the College Football Hall of Fame.
It was such a great and interesting experience. I mean, I truly appreciate meeting you. That's definitely been a great thing. I just want to go back to a little bit growing up in Newport. What was that like?
It was nice. I think when you start out in life, like that's what you know, right? So you feel like, oh, this is great. This is a city. Just because by definition it is within like once you get out and explore, you're like, oh, there's more in this world than Newport News, Virginia. But it's a great place. One of the amazing things about Newport News or Virginia in general, it's surrounded by water. And so I grew up going to beaches in the summer, festivals, things of that nature. I think it's a great place for families, and it's a military area. So Virginia has every branch of the military within the state. And so I like watching shows like NCIS or FBI Criminal Intent, and they talk about places that are really close to my home. So my father is retired military. So is my grandfather on my maternal side. And so kind of interesting, though my parents or military, we never had to move. So like my dad was always stationed around the world. Like he spent 3 years in Antarctica, he spent time in New Zealand, Philippines, Japan, but his movements were always singular. So even though I'm technically a military kid, I didn't get that experience. And there was, Fort Eustis, a base in Newport News, and that's where we were stationed, and that's just where we live. But I didn't really get to see the world as a military kid. But yeah, cute, small town. Michael Vick is from there, Allen Iverson. So we have a lot of sports phenoms from my area.
As you mentioned, you went to school. Is what you went to school for what you're working on now?
There are definitely parallel paths. So I went to undergrad for professional sports management and grad for sports leadership. And so while I was an undergrad, I had a great chance to explore different venues of sports. So typically football, basketball, soccer, like your norms, but I wanted to do something a little bit different. And so when I was in college, I worked with our football teams and our basketball teams and volleyball, things like that. But I chose Charlotte in particular because it was an area that had a lot of things to offer, including like minor league baseball, hockey, and NASCAR. And so NASCAR was always a dream of mine. And so I was able to work hospitality on the NASCAR circuit. I worked for Octagon, which is a sports agency. So that was really, really great. But while I was in undergrad, I really took a strong liking to the development of athletes. And so when I was in school, you really didn't see roles for universities or even professional teams in the area of player development. Like it was something that started just probably in the last 5 or so years that became really, really prevalent. And so I worked in the sports information department and I started to do events for sports, right? So with recruiting, um, hosting families, hosting seminars, things on campus, working with NCAA tournaments. So that's where I got my background in events from. And so after leaving undergrad, I, you know, in grad went back to Virginia. I actually opened Ultimate University's football department in 2007. It's a Division I program. They hadn't had football in like 50 years, and so still doing the same thing. I work for the head coach, but got more of a hospitality feel, and then I started to build like my events background there. But still, just having this love for athletes and what they were doing off of the field, because I started to see athletes that like would get injured but didn't know who they were outside of the uniform, or some had like criminal offenses and didn't know how to deal with the system, or some were just playing sports just because but knew they wanted to do something else because there was a very slim chance that they would either go on to a professional level or to just to work in sports in general. And so sort of take a very strong liking just to athlete and coaches development because I saw coaches kind of struggle through that system as well. And that led me to establish the Coaches Collective, which I started in 2020. And it's an organization where we work with local high school sports teams and coaches on their matriculation through either the sport or coaching phase, right? So who people are off the field is what's really important. And so I've got a team of people that have helped me out over the years, including you yourself, Jeremy, in donating. So we do all types of things from mentorship to rebuilding gyms to aligning coaches with professionals within the sport so that they can also do things like internships as an adult. So I think what I went to school for definitely parallels what I'm doing now.
Elise, I love that you mentioned that. So, another question I do have for you is I think in our road, in our journey, on our path, there's opportunities to go east, to go west, to go left, to go right. Can you give me a moment where you might not have known the outcome, but you chose a path and what ended up happening because of that?
Absolutely. I think even moving to Atlanta, right, in 2018, like I knew that I wanted to do more in sports. Again, where I'm from in Virginia, you don't have like professional sports teams, things like that. Um, but it was a pivotal moment in my life because I was like, I know that I'm called to do more. And I always felt with such a supportive family that I could come back home. So if something didn't work, I've got great parents that would let me, like bum off them in their house, which is fantastic. But I always live by the fact that you get one life and one shot in certain areas. And so I wanted to branch out. I knew I didn't want to go north. It's way too cold for me, super expensive. I didn't know exactly where I wanted to go, but I knew that I needed to go and try. Because on one hand, I was working with athletes and I was always telling them, you are more, you can be more, you can do more, go see the world. But was I actually doing that? And so I had a deep conversation with my parents and decided to just kind of cast my net. And when I started to like look for jobs, Atlanta was just the place that kept hitting back over and over again. The job market, especially for what I do, isn't always the best because they're limited positions, because it's entertainment, right? So like you might not have a plethora of these things. So I decided to take that leap of faith. And I'm glad that I did. Obviously, I would have met you, I would have met some other great people. But I think sometimes we can get stuck in places. And I was doing things back home, but because I'm from there, I feel like at some point people would have kept me in a box, right? Like, oh, that's just Elise and she this and she that. I needed to grow. I needed to stretch. I needed to see what I was actually capable of. So, like, coming to Atlanta, I was on my own. I was trying to like figure it out, a new city, trying to figure out my life, career, all these things. So I think that's one of the best things that I've ever could have done.
Elise, I love that. And as you know, it's a very strong parallel to my life, moving from the Midwest to not knowing a single person in the South. And it was just one of those exciting moments, as you mentioned, a leap of faith, and just it was such a great experience. I truly, I'm sure I speak for you as well. It's just a truly an amazing experience. That one, it was awesome. We got to do it together.
Yeah, for sure.
So the title of the podcast is "Into the Unknown," and I just want to know what's your unknown. What are you stepping into that is unknown for you?
I just had a milestone birthday. Um, and I was thinking back the other week. I was like laying in my bed and I told myself, I remember in the third grade, our teacher asked us, like, like, what do you want to do? I think it was like in your 20s. And at that point, I don't know how old you are in the seventh grade or the third grade. I don't know, eight. I don't know anything about kids, but I was like, oh, like when I'm 24, I want to be married and kids and this and that. And then you get to 24 and you're like, absolutely not. Right? Like, I need to like get a job and make money and figure this out and figure that out. And then you hit 30 and it's like, okay, well, I know myself a little bit better. And maybe I don't want kids, but I do want to get married, but I also want to have a great career. And then you hit 35, which that's how old I was when I moved to Atlanta. Um, and you just start to grow more and more and more. And the more that I feel like I've charted out my life, the more I realize that I have not. Right? Like, I have no clue what's going to happen in this next decade. I have no clue sometimes, like, exactly what I want to do. Like, I know what I don't want. And I think that's important. And so I feel like I'm living in the unknown right now, but I'm literally just trusting God day by day for a great vision for my life. I do know that I want to help others and I want to implement change and I want to see athletes grow and develop off of the field and to become great people and great citizens of their communities and to be mentally stable and well. But as far as anything else, I'm not sure, but it's also okay. And I'm okay with just not having a peek into my future. Um, when I look back, there were no mistakes made in the sense of moving was a great thing for me. Where I went to school was a great thing for me. So all the things that I had been worried about worked out. So there's no need to take that kind of fear or angst into the future because if it worked back then, I trust that God will have it work going forward. And I don't want to limit myself by like putting these labels and boxes on where I think I should be when I should be there. And so every day is literally a faith walk for me.
At least I love that. I mean, it really is stepping into the unknown. I know we've talked about it. There's something exciting about leaning into that kind of unknown. I always compare it to like a roller coaster ride when you know you're about to hit the drop. As maybe a kid when you're younger, it is scary and that's understandable. But I think in at least my journey and moving around, doing all that, is when you hit that unknown moment, you kind of get excited now. I'm like looking forward to what's next, even though I might not have the blueprints laid out like I probably thought I did in like third grade, like you mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Elise, if people want to learn more about you or your organization, where can they find you on social media?
We are on social media, coaches underscore collect, which is on Instagram and on Twitter. We're also on Threads and known as the Coaches Collective on LinkedIn.
I love that. Well, Elise, I just want to say thank you again. I've appreciated getting to know you over the last 4, almost 5 years now, and it's just been great. I'm so happy to see what the future lies ahead for you.
Thanks, Jeremy. You're amazing. You introduced me to rugby. I knew nothing about it before I met you, so I actually pay attention to it now.
I love that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Talk soon.